Hey folks, see Rachana Ranade here, and I welcome you all to a very important video which is about the fall of Credit Suisse and very important, what or how will it impact India. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to divide this entire video into two major parts. The very first one is understanding the impact of this Credit Suisse entire story on India, and number two, we are going to talk about three major problem statements with regard to Credit Suisse. I'll also tell you which are the three major problem statements that we are going to discuss. The very first one, we are going to talk about the deteriorating financial condition of Credit Suisse. Then we are going to talk about the loss of confidence amongst the investors and the customers. And number three, we are going to talk about what are the different problems with the management. So let's get started one by one. First of all, we're going to try and understand the impact on India. I'm sure many of you might be like, why all of a sudden all the YouTube creators or everywhere in news, why is everyone talking about Credit Suisse? I, as an individual, I don't have money in Credit Suisse. None of my team members have money in Credit Suisse. All normal retail individual investors like you and me, we don't have money in Credit Suisse. Why are we even discussing about it? So the whole point is not about how much money we have in Credit Suisse. It's more about how much money they have invested in India. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because of the deteriorating financial condition of Credit Suisse, if they need more money, I'm sure everyone knows that a lot of money is being pumped into Credit Suisse. We are also going to talk about that. But if they need more and more money, what are they going to do? They are going to sell off their assets. They are going to take back that money, and that is how they'll be able to clear their liabilities, right? But then we have to understand how much money Credit Suisse has parked in India, which could fly away outside India. So for that, when I checked out an articles on Economic Times, I found that this bank has owns assets worth 20,700 crores in India. Well, if you ask me, is that a big amount? Not really, considering the total amount involved in this entire story. This is comparatively a smaller amount. Then should we be concerned with this? In the same article, a very interesting point is mentioned that foreign banks have a relatively smaller presence in India, but they are more active in the derivatives market. Which derivative market? Typically into number one, in forex derivative market, and number two, in interest rates derivative markets, where these foreign banks have a 50% share. Okay, now you can imagine if something like someone like Credit Suisse or other financial bank or other foreign banks start or maybe trade less in the derivative markets because of their bad financial position, then automatically our volumes will dry up, and somewhere or the other, all those players related to this derivative markets are going to face the heat. Number one. Number two, one more very important point is mentioned in that same point, that Swiss banking giant has a presence. So same, basically Credit Suisse has a presence in the derivative market, and they fund 60% of its assets from borrowings, of which 96% have a tenure of up to 2 months, according to a study by Jeffries. Now, what does this mean? See, if they have entered into a derivative market and if the position goes against them, they'll have to fund that position, they'll have to pay more and more money. Now, for that, they have already taken a borrowing. If they start taking on more and more borrowings, that will lead to a further problem for them. But even if I'm talking about their present borrowings, they have to repay that borrowing in a time span of what? Only in a time span of 2 months. So, is that a big problem? Ideally, yes. And it is expected that RBI will have to have a close watch on majorly two issues. One is the liquidity issue, and number two is the counterparty risk or the counterparty exposure. So, I hope you have understood all in all. So, just to sum up this entire situation, is it going to directly impact people like you and me? Answer is no. It will not directly impact. What is the indirect impact? For the indirect impact, they may sell off the assets. They may convert their so whatever money is sold, they'll get in rupees. They'll have to convert it into their foreign currency, and they will take that money out of India. So our forex reserves can be impacted. Number two, as I said, a major portion of derivative market volume comes from foreign banks. If that starts drying up, it will impact that ecosystem. Plus, whatever they have taken to trade in this derivative segment, that also maturity is going to happen in 2 months. If they are not able to pay that, it will lead to a counterparty risk and liquidity risk. I hope you have understood about the situation in India, but then we have to also understand one important point before we move on to the problem statements. Just in case if you still don't know who is Credit Suisse, let me just tell you in one simple line. It's a multinational financial services company and it offers four major services. Very first one, they offer wealth management services. So for ultra HNIs, like some of you, okay, they will provide wealth management services. Number two, they are into investment banking also. They're into asset management. So something like mutual funds have asset management companies, right? So they are also in an asset management. And also they provide other financial services. Okay. If I were to give you a context, Credit Suisse is among the world's largest wealth managers and they are among the 30 globally systemically important banks. Now, just in case if you don't know what do we mean by a systemically important bank, it means that these banks are too big to fail, or 1% if they fail, that could trigger a wider financial crisis. It could lead to a financial crisis which can threaten the global economy. So ideally such banks will not be allowed to fail. So I hope in this first segment of the video you have understood who is Credit Suisse, what are their four major operations, why is Credit Suisse so important. We discussed systemically important bank is, Credit Suisse is one of the systemically important banks. And number four, we also discussed about the importance of this or the impact of this on India. So now this is understood. Let's move on with the next point, which is about the deteriorating financial condition. All right, so let's get started. First, we are going to try and understand about the deteriorating financial condition, as I mentioned just now. But we are going to talk only about 2023 because this is where the latest trigger of the latest trigger about the downfall happened, right? So first, it all started on 9th of February 2023 when the worst quarterly loss was declared by Credit Suisse. In fact, whatever were the expected losses, this entity declared larger losses than even the expected losses. Whatever I discussed right now was about the quarterly loss. Now even if I talk about the yearly loss, entire year 2022, this loss was amounting to 7.9 billion US dollars. And if I were to just give you a quantification, is this really big or not, this is the second worst loss if I'm comparing right from even 2008. Okay, in 2008 it had a loss of 8.9 billion dollars, and after that the second biggest loss since 2008 also, it is this year 2022, which is 7.9 billion US dollars. So 8th February, this was a big shock, and that is why the stock plummeted at the first instance in this year. Second thing, it happened on 9th March 2023. So where they actually were queried by US Securities Exchange Commission. So like we have SEBI, in US they have SEC, right? They were queried about the bank's annual report filing and they forced them to delay their publication. Now what happens, I'll tell you. See, in February, the point that I told you, they just declare their numbers, okay, but then do they also have to file their annual report? Obviously yes. So annual report filing is a much detailed document. So when they had given this their entire annual report document, they had made certain adjustments to the cash flows of 2019 and 2020. Okay, and this exactly was questioned by Securities Exchange Commission, and they said that we want clarifications on this and we request you to check this again and refile if necessary. This was 9th March 2023, and on 14th March 2023 they published the delayed annual report because like I said, 9th March they had submitted, but then US SEC had certain queries. So after rechecking whatever, they again filed on 14th March 2023, wherein they announced about the material weaknesses in its financial control, and they also said that this is going to end all the board bonuses, which because of what? Because of financial difficulties in 2022. So with all these things, I'm sure you might have understood that the situation was not so very easy. It is grave. And for that, we have to also understand about the entire financial position. So for that, I would want you all to look at the financials at a glance. So if I were to talk about 2020, see here, net revenues going down from 22,000 to almost 15,000. One clarification, I'm going to just round off the figures. And number two, all these are in CHF million. CHF is basically Swiss francs. Okay, so revenue clearly dropping. Second one, if I talk about net incomes from 2066 in profit, they went into loss, and then 7,306 again loss. Then we talk about the comparison of consolidated balance sheet. This is at the bank level, this is the group level, so we are going to focus mainly on group level. If you see, have a look at their balance sheet size. Their balance sheet size itself has gone from 7 lakh plus to in assets 5 lakh plus, and in liabilities 4 lakh 86,000, of course balance being the shareholders funds, right? So I hope you have understood that their basic balance sheet size has itself shrunk a lot. If I'm talking about the capitalization and indebtedness, one important point here is about how much is the customer deposits. If you see here in 2022, the customer deposits were 3 lakh 92,000, and this shrunk to 2 lakh 33,000. Does that also clearly show about the loss of trust, and because of which there is a lot of withdrawal in the deposit? So all in all, I can say that their position was not at all strong at a yearly level. If I were to go a little bit zoomed in picture at a quarterly level, have a look at this quarterly level also. See, from 40 again, now again a clarification, again this is in Swiss francs, but all numbers are in thousands, right? So from 40 lakh 31,000, this is 30th December 2021. And if I were to compare directly with 30th December 22, just have a look at this. From 40 lakh to direct 30 lakhs, revenue dropped drastically. And even if I talk about the pre-tax income, from 15 lakh 86,000 minus to 35 lakh 58,000 minus, 32 lakh 58,000 minus, that's not at all a good sign. So I hope all in all you have understood that the financials were clearly in a mess. So now let's move on with problem statement number 2, which is about the loss of confidence among investors and customers. Like I said just now, as compared to 2021, and if I'm comparing 2021 and 2022, there was a big drop in the deposits from customers. In fact, their deposits went down from 394 billion Swiss francs to 235 billion Swiss francs just in 1 year. Now, when the deposits were drying up at a similar time, few days slash weeks ago, we all knew what happened, the big collapse about SVB, right? Now when SVB collapsed, there were fears that maybe even Credit Suisse could be the next in line. To add to all of these things, many people are talking about if there is a run on the bank, maybe they will face a liquidity crisis as well. Now if the bank falls short of liquidity, then what is required? Then it is required that more liquidity is pumped into the bank. And for that, the largest shareholder of the bank was looked at. And who is the largest shareholder? It is SNB, which is the Saudi National Bank. And they were holding some 9% plus, above 9, whatever, 9 point something percent they were holding in this, in Credit Suisse. But when they were asked whether they will pump in more money, they said we cannot do that, we cannot go above 10%. And the logic for that, he said that it is more of a regulatory issue. If they go above 10%, then they'll have to go ahead with loads and loads of disclosures, load of regulatory restrictions. And that is the reason why they would not want to invest more in this, in Credit Suisse. But this was not definitely taken as a good news. And do you know what happened in one single day? This led to a fall in the stock price by more than 30, almost 30% in a single day, that is on 15th of March, and also a sharp rise in the credit default swap of Credit Suisse. Well, if you want to know more about credit default swaps, what is the meaning of that, and a lot more in details about that, then don't forget to check out our blogs, and the link of that blog is in the pinned comment below. One final point before we move on to the third key point, which is about the problems with the management, is this happened overnight? Did this entire problem start in 2023? For that, have a look at this chart. You can clearly see that the Credit Suisse stock has been falling and falling and falling since 2006. It has corrected by more than 97%. It looks more like a penny stock now. So now that you have understood about the price movement of Credit Suisse, we have talked a lot. Let's move on with the third point. Now let us move on with point number 3. Well, it is said that even if your business model is really, really strong, but if the top level management is not having integrity, basically integrity is like honesty, then there are great chances that the organization will derail at some point in time. As far as Credit Suisse is concerned, there were multiple scenarios, multiple key events wherein the management, the senior level management, were either directly or indirectly involved in certain malicious activities. So let's understand them one by one. In 2007, three former traders at Credit Suisse were charged with bond frauds. The false profits allowed traders to secure a cash bonus of more than $1.7 million dollars and a stock award of more than $5.2 million dollars. In 2013, they were charged with forex manipulation. Credit Suisse was fined for participating in forex spot trading cartel in conjunction with few other key banks. In 2014, US tax fraud conspiracy happened wherein Credit Suisse pleaded guilty to conspiracy to aid and assist US taxpayers in filing false returns. In 2015, Malaysia development Berhad scandal happened wherein a vocal critic of former Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak, Khairuddin, told Reuters that deposits of over $250 million were made into a Credit Suisse bank account in Hong Kong through four companies linked to Najib. Then happened the tuna bond scandal, wherein the Swiss bank was fined nearly 350 million euros by global regulators in October 2021 after pleading guilty to wire fraud in a long running scandal that pushed the country of Mozambique into a financial crisis. Then happened the default of Archegos hedge fund. The bank had basically lent around 5 billion US dollars and lost 5.5 billion US dollars when Archegos capital management collapsed in early 2021. An independent report into Credit Suisse involvement with the risky hedge fund basically slammed the bank's conduct and found that its losses were the result of a fundamental failure of management and control at its investment bank and its prime brokerage division in particular. Then happened the Greensill capital collapse. Well, the bank was forced to suspend $10 billion of investor funds in March 2021 when the British supply chain lender Greensill Capital collapsed. Credit Suisse had sold billions of dollars of Greensill's debt to investors, assuring them in marketing material that the high yield notes were low risk because the underlying credit was fully insured. But then you know what happened? They went bankrupt. Corporate spying was also one of the cases. Well, Credit Suisse former chief executive Tijan Thiam was forced to leave the bank in March 2020 after an investigation found that it had spied on two of its employees. In fact, the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, FINMA, said that the bank had planned spying operations on several occasions between 2016 and 2019 and carried out most of them. Coming to 2022, drug money laundering scandal happened wherein Credit Suisse has been found guilty by a Swiss court of failing to prevent money laundering between 2004 and 2008. And then the famous or infamous Swiss secret leaks happened. In February 2022, the details of 30,000 customers holding over 100 billion Swiss francs in accounts at the bank were leaked and became known as the Swiss secrets. In 2022, again, Russian oligarch loans document destruction after invasion of Ukraine was the big thing that was being talked of. Well, it so happened that Credit Suisse asked investors to destroy documents related to yacht loans for oligarchs after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The bank had allegedly given loans to oligarchs to purchase yachts, and it feared that the documents could be used to implicate them in money laundering or sanction violations. And then there is a case where there is a lack of direction in the business, specifically because of multiple series of leadership changes, and Credit Suisse has also been criticized for its lack of clarity in strategy. I talked about 12 points back to back. I'm actually tired. I need a water break. But these were only the key events that I talked about. The list is not yet over, but I think this is more than enough to tell you about what happened with Credit Suisse. So now the big question, what next? What is the way ahead? So basically Credit Suisse is going to borrow up to $54 billion from Swiss Central Bank. But does this mean that all the problems for Credit Suisse are over? I don't personally feel so. I feel that this is like a stopgap arrangement. There may be a lot of pain which is still left in the system, but I think it's just time that will tell as to what will happen next. So whenever I get more and more updates about such topics, I will try my best to deliver these topics in the most simplified manner. If you still have any doubts about whatever I told today, don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Even if you have any doubts, put that in the comment section. Me and my team will be really happy to sort out all your doubts. And if you have liked this video, if you found some value in the video, don't forget to smash the like button. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Till then, take care. Jai Hind and bye bye.